journey, they look, they learn, they try and be curious, and then they will get the A anyway. But this time, the stress of getting the A is not there. And I think the students are too stressed now.
Yeah, I think what you're trying to say is, while they are trying to get those A's, like you said, it's not we are saying that, oh, don't, oh, try no more A's, let's remove grading altogether. That's not what we're trying to say. What we're trying to say here is that you put the focus on learning instead of acquiring something at the end. If that A's will be just the byproduct, if you manage to make students love learning, right? If you make students be fascinated with learning, instead of putting the focus on the A itself, if you put the focus on the journey, and then the destination is almost guaranteed, just like to quote your example of going to the lake. So if I just concentrate step after step, using the map to get there, I'm definitely going to get to the lake. That's right. Then I'm not going to skip.
The difference is that you get to see, oh, that was a beautiful animal over there. That's a nice tree. Oh, there's a little pathway here. You get to, you get other things along the way, and not just the A. Surely it cannot be 6 years and all you get is the A.
Yeah, because I think even on the previous live, Ms. Nazreen, and we've had a lot of discussion in the office about this, that at the end of the day, you don't want a child who goes to the exam and then, 6 months later, they don't remember anything about what they studied in school. Because
after 6 months, sometimes after the exam is over, they forget it already.
Yeah, right after the exam. Oh, okay, done. I'm done. I've just emptied my mind, and that's it, right? So, if in order to avoid this, and then definitely we need to make sure the next generation, the current generation, as a matter of fact, falls in love with learning. Now that brings us to the next question that we keep saying and we keep skidding around, that we do agree that you should not move the focus away from A's. You can't say, oh, it's okay if your kids get all B's. It's okay if your kids just get all credits. That's not correct as well. Now, why do you think that is the case? That we should still keep, our focus on the prize?
I mean, ultimately, okay, what the A shows, okay, there are a few things that the A can do. One of it is obviously a gauge of the aptitude of the student. Then there must be a way that we can say, okay, he has put in effort and that effort has borne fruit. And it is also a matter for the kid as well. He now feels a sense of accomplishment, right? I mean, imagine you study so long and you put in the time, you read up all the books, and then now you get an A. The student will be able to feel that sense of accomplishment, right? So it doesn't make them complacent. But the thing is, the difference, however, is that now that A is a reward. It is no longer the aim.
And it's no longer something that they got for someone else. It's something that they got for themselves.
No, they say, I did it for me.
Correct. I did it for me. Exactly. That's the most important thing that I think we should be making students feel, that, okay, I actually want to get A, not because my parents want to, not because my teacher wants to, not because the society wants to. It's because who I am. I excel, right? I excel. I get what I'm supposed to get because I'm good at this, and we drive a culture of excellence. I always share this with my students as well. I'm not saying you should get A because it's the right thing to do. I think you should get an A because it's who you are. You're quite good. You're excellent. You should prove the point that, you are able to master this.
Yeah.
So that should be the focus, instead of telling kids, no, I think it's a participation trophy syndrome. It's okay, like everybody can just be
everybody gets a B, it's okay. No, I mean, it's still important that we have competitive spirit in the students.
Correct.
They want to excel in the things they want to excel. Right? So yeah, exactly like what you say. I told my students, I said, look, you get the A for yourself. You know?
And most importantly, the pursuit of an A, I think, also does teach students quite a number of things. Like, for example, you definitely learn planning. You definitely know how to, which one to focus, which areas you should sharpen. Time management. And when you're chasing a goal, it also cultivates drive in the student, to excel. And life is going to be all about that. You have to chase your goals. You have to aim bigger, grow. You're uncomfortable, you grow out of the comfort zone into something better. So all these things are part of life. So I don't understand when people say that, no, I don't want to stress my children. And then that brings us to the next very interesting conversation. That stress, I think, is a matter of perspective.
Yes.
Like, stress is completely a matter of perspective. Like, we notice some of our students, they actually are working way harder now than when they were used to be in a traditional school. And then the parents have come back to us and say like, but my child doesn't seem to complain.
Correct. They work harder, but they are less stressed.
They're less stressed, exactly. They're studying more. They put in the hours. They actually
Correct.
do more questions and they do more research. But they seem to enjoy it. And like, I remember one of my students, he comes back to class every time. Oh, teacher, the documentary you asked me to watch, it was fantastic. Like, this I didn't know. So they are now excited about learning, even though there's more time spent. I think parents need to understand that as well. It's not that if you make your child study more, they're going to be stressed. It's what they study, how they study. That's equally.
And whether they want to study, right?
Yeah,
if they want to know, if they want to learn about the thing, it doesn't become a chore. It is not homework. It is, this is what I'm doing because I want to do it. So it's like a hobby or it's like an interest, right? A passion. So when you do it, you don't feel the stress.
Correct. I think for an adult, it's like saying that there's no difference between work and play. It's sort of an integration. Like studying becomes like that. Oh, I study because I love this. This is quite interesting to me. Yeah. So this is what I think both parents and teachers should strive for, because we can see in our students that, they get, it's a state of flow for them. Like it becomes easy. It's very much fun and whatever not. Now, if let's say, we have already discussed this in terms of, let's say A's was not the measure, because a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to put so much of focus on A's. What other ways would you measure whether a student has done well in school?
Well, there's a lot of things, but one of it is when they become more curious, for example. When you explain a certain topic or you explain a certain phenomenon. For example, I teach physics, right? So if you explain something about even a simple physics problem, usually what I'll do is I'll link it to something that happens in the in the world.
Okay.
Stars, or we'll link it to how your car works, everything. The student's ability to absorb knowledge is normally correlated to their ability to ask more questions relating to that.
Right. So like what you're trying to say is, at the end of the day, how you measure whether they have done well, whether they have studied well, is like, are they able to apply knowledge in real life scenarios?
Correct. Are they able to apply knowledge? Are they able to admit limitation to their knowledge and therefore want to learn more?
Yeah, I think this is very interesting, like even for economics, because I teach economics and business studies, right? I noticed there's many ways people can teach economics. One of the most boring ways is like, okay, guys, this is law of demand. Okay, memorize this, the definition. This is the way it's done. And then you can talk about, okay, why did the supply, or how did the demand and supply work during COVID? Like, the fact, for example, US had a complete breakdown of their value chain because they've been always, sending production overseas, right? So there's a lot of things that you can, like you said, like how physics relates to your car. So you can also make the knowledge become reality. It becomes like part of them, part of life. And then
a tangible thing that they can see, rather than it exists in a book. And I have to remember this. I don't know where this is. It's in some abstract world. I've never seen it. But we bring it closer to home. It becomes physical reality,
And I think the moment students can see the utility in the knowledge that they are learning, then they become completely interested and immersed, Suddenly they're like, oh, wow. So like, the political situation in Malaysia is somehow related to economics. Like, the people run business is related to business studies.
Sometimes they see connection that they didn't see before.
Right, yeah, exactly.
The thing I'm learning now is the reason why, say, the sky is blue. I never knew, I never knew it was because of that. I didn't see it, right? So they get more engaged in the subject.
Yes, especially that, like, they get more engaged in the subject. And I think engagement eventually drives interest, and then interest becomes love, and then automatically the process gets sorted. And when the process gets sorted, the results get sorted.
Yep.
Unfortunately, why do you think most teachers do not take this path?
It is not for me to comment on teachers, but I think some of them either, because teaching is a skill.
Okay. Hello. Okay.
That not everybody can possess. It is not in no way, saying anything bad about some of these teachers who can't do it, but I feel like they have not appreciated the real reason why they became teachers. You know, they forget. They become like those people who say, okay, I just want to make sure this kid get an A. And they themselves don't appreciate the subject they're teaching. So I think because of that, that is an issue. They themselves don't find it interesting. How are they supposed to make the kids interested in the subject?
Yeah. I think this is very important, because when you cannot fill from an empty cup. If you yourself are not super passionate about what you're teaching, like that's not what drives you, and then it's going to be very hard for you to inspire that passion in a student because you don't have it in you. Like, you don't know what all this is about. You're just following a textbook and you're just teaching. So then it becomes very difficult for the student to feel passionate as well. So I think this is a very good point. And then, like what you just mentioned, the teachers just focus on exam guidelines and exam techniques. Okay, I'm not saying throw exams out of the window. But a lot of parents have pointed out that some schools or some teachers, what happens is, okay, this is the syllabus. This is how they're gonna ask the questions. Let's try like 10, 20, 30 of those questions until you drill in your head. That's how the question is asked. Now, yeah.
No. So basically, what they're doing is they're teaching you how to answer exam questions. They're not teaching you physics. They're not teaching you maths or economics or chemistry.
Correct. And this is a real problem. This is when that situation happens, when you mentioned outside of the exam hall, everything is gone. Everything is empty out of the head. So I think, a lot of parents also have realized this, that they feel like, oh, this is not how it should be. But then again, can we say that focusing on exam techniques is a bad thing?
Well, obviously not. You see, the thing about exam techniques is that it is a skill that will be useful not just for an exam. It will be useful for in real life because it teaches you how to manage resources, how to manage time, how to look at a problem and analyze what does the problem want. So these are techniques that are still useful. But if you do not mention that these techniques are equally useful outside of an exam setting, then people will say, oh, this is just for it. And after the exam, I'll just throw it all out.
Right. I mean, I just had this discussion today with a student. The fact that I think most teachers, that's where they fail. They fail to tell students, actually, there's a reason why the exam is set this way. They are actually assessing your time management skill, number one. Second, they're testing, like, at least for IGCSE, we know a lot of it is testing your critical thinking skill, whether you're analytical or not.
Of the knowledge.
Correct. How can you apply the knowledge, especially in economics? I'm not so sure about physics, but I know in economics and business studies, a lot of it is about applying what they have studied in like case study situations. Are they able to do this? But if you just teach students that and you don't teach them how do you apply these exam techniques in real life, like analyzing certain questions. So in real life, you're also going to get news, and you also have to analyze, okay, what this is all about. And when they say describe, justify, I don't know if physics has this question, right? But economics and business studies always has this question called, one of the keywords is justify. So when they say justify, they always ask you to look at both angles and then make up your mind on it. So
yeah, it exists in physics as well.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, it will be a particular thing. They say, okay, if I put this thing here and then I do this, do you think the temperature will rise, for example?
Okay.
If so, can you justify why you think that is the case?
Yeah.
I didn't teach him or her this particular experiment. I taught the main ideas, the core concepts in physics. Now you have to take that and apply it to this real life problem that the question has asked. Right?
So that's very interesting, because I was sharing like today, I had an interview 2 days back. So when I asked the candidate, tell me about your family. And then the candidate spoke, I have a sister. And then he went on to say that, I like playing football. I like rock climbing. I like outdoors. And then I'm like, this sounds like all those students who just memorize the syllabus and then they're like waiting to vomit, because you notice that a lot of students do this. The question just mentions the topic or mentions some keyword from the topic and then they just start vomiting out without being able to think. So that I was pointing this out to my student. When people say that exam techniques or exam style questions are not important, you need to understand those people sitting on the Cambridge board didn't design the question just for exam's sake. They're actually trying to teach you a skill,
Yeah.
a life skill, like, you know, how to analyze, how to justify, how to look at both ends, even both sides of a coin, even though you are very much sided to one, you know, you still want to appreciate the opposing view.
Well, that doesn't happen in physics, obviously, because there are no opinions in physics. It's either going to be fact or you are wrong.
Yeah,
So that exists, but in our sense, there will be no biased judgment. So they do fall for what we call common sense. You know, they make a mistakes in common sense. They think this is what should happen, but they think a bit harder about it. That should, you know, something else happens. And these are the skills that the examiners want to see. They don't want you to write the whole essay about that particular topic.
correct.
Yeah.
Correct. What they're looking for is that you actually develop some problem solving skills. And I think those things are actually something that you're going to carry on even after your exams are over. And if students can be told those things, then it would make their preparation for exams a lot more joyful, because they know they're learning something that they're going to carry forward after school. But
Right.
unfortunately, I think what has happened is, even with this sort of, even though Cambridge has put in this effort, I think a lot of people work around it, and then they just make it into rote memorization. Okay, if this question comes out, this is what you do, point 1, 2, 3, 4, and then, you know, they just make them memorize.
These are skills you want to be able to carry forward in your workplace, in your real life. That's the point. Your education is supposed to prepare you for that. You don't do the education and then suddenly, okay, I forget everything, and then now you're starting back in the real world with no skills. Then what have you been doing for the past?
Correct. That years of education then just goes to waste, you know, because everybody can't see that this is a skill set that you're acquiring for the next stage. It's really unfortunate. Now, if you, based on all our discussion right now, right, Rasyad, what would you say are the main issues that you think is currently inhibiting the progress of students? With the amount of students that you've taught and whatever not, what do you think is actually stopping them from progressing for most
Well,
students?
my current students are all excellent kids. So,
So shout out to all students that Mr. Rasyad is teaching. He thinks you guys are all excellent.
the best students ever. No, but yeah, so a lot of the students I see that usually the issue is with mindset, right? They have issues with, because for them, they can't link the ideas of what they're studying to the real world. They think this is just something they are testing me on. It seems like a useless piece of trivia.
Yeah, got that a lot.
Yeah, this is just useless trivia I have to memorize so that I get an A, so that I can get a job. No, the point is not that. The point is that these are teaching you skills that you will apply later on.
Right.
Also, some of them are just being spoon-fed. Everybody, you know, if you remember, I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid last time in school, basically they say, all right, this is how you solve a quadratic equation, this is how you solve integration. Okay, just memorize this. Oh, why? Just do this way, you'll get A.
I remember.
That magic is like, oh, just memorize this and then, okay, you'll get this. And then the problem is, some of the students are not smart enough to memorize them, cannot do it. And then you say the student is bad. No, it's because you didn't tell them why this works or why that technique works, right?
The whole x equals 2, and then they have an equation that you have to memorize, and
like, oh, okay, where did this come from? Oh, it's from the textbook. What the
yeah, that's exactly it. Like, a lot of my students used to say that, oh, that's what the previous teacher said. Oh, it's from the textbook. Oh, it's in the textbook, so you should know it. But unfortunately, right, like, even if you said this maybe 15 years ago, those kids listen. Kids these days, you tell them it's from the textbook, so follow. They're like, why?
Yeah. It's funny when a student will come to me, oh, I can't do physics because I have to memorize so many formulas. There's so very little formulas you have to memorize. You have to learn how to apply them, that's all. In fact, the tools in there are so small that I'm surprised a lot of people think that it's a memorizing subject. It's not.
No, I think another teacher shared this before. I think Miss Devina has told me something similar when I was when we had this discussion. She mentioned that apparently most of the formulas are derived from each other.
Exactly.
But the students don't know how to do it because the teachers usually just want them to memorize a list of formulas.
Yeah.
Right.
So the other day, I had a class with one of my students, and we were doing a coordinate geometry. It's a mathematics class. And then, oh, I can't remember the formula for this. I said, okay, I'm not going to tell you what the formula is. Let's see if we can get the formula from logic by looking at the question and seeing how they got the formula in the first place. Then I showed. So in that, the particular topic, there are a few formulas. And then I derived each and every one for her, and she realized, oh, so that's why the formula works. Oh, that makes sense.
Mm.
It makes sense. Once you see how it works, it's no longer magic. It's no longer something you have to memorize.
Yeah, it's no longer
You will remember it anyway. See, because you don't try to memorize it and you try to understand it, what happens is that it will be locked in forever.
Right. Yeah, okay. So that's the thing. Understanding what it is all about, you know. So I think that's not happening. Now you notice that I don't know about you, but a lot of students when they started in Pasxcel, I think when they came to you, I don't think so that was the case. But when they started, I noticed a lot of them. Another problem, main inhibitions that students have is they just think they're not smart enough or they're not meant for an A. I hate physics, for example. I hate physics.
You said that.
Yeah, even I said that. And then whenever students come to me and go like, oh, teacher, economics very boring. I really cannot take it. I'm like, really? How come? And then when I teach it, it becomes a completely different thing. So now the question then lies, right? Who is it that we are supposed to blame? Are we supposed to say, because I know I hear a lot of teachers start teacher room stories, you know, oh, this student is not interested, this student doesn't want to do it, they just don't have what it takes. So a lot of putting the blame is always on the student. Now, yeah, it's always on the student. And I think teaching is a very funny business because that's the only place where, you know, you could do a very bad job and get away with blaming the other party, right?
No accountability on the teacher's side. You can always say the student is the one who did not study hard enough.
Right.
Half of the effort should come from the teacher to make it engaging for the student, to make it interesting for them to learn.
Yeah.
Connections. If you can always blame it on the students, you don't need a teacher at all. Just give them the textbook and say, read the textbook.
Exactly. So, okay, so while we're going here, there's a comment that has come in from Chitra Devi Puvendran. She says, how do you encourage your students to think out of the box? So, Rasha, do you want to answer that first or should I go first?
You can go first.
Okay, so whenever I get a student, well, thinking out of the box definitely requires, I mean, it's a very open-ended question. So what I can do is I can make them think critically, analytically, and I can make them gauge what are the options available in front of them. So economics is a very interesting subject, at least for me, because you can do so many things and each thing that you do will have, for example, a domino effect on so many other things, right? So what we do is how we encourage students to think outside of the box is that we lead with what we call an adaptive teaching methodology at Pasxcel. It's always based on adaptation, meaning if the student knows something, we link it on and on until they find the answer on their own. So one of the things that all the teachers at Pasxcel are very committed about is that we don't spoon feed. Even though that we are going to take so much longer to make the student get a topic, we're going to take that time because once that is done, it is done for life because the student has made it their own. And then they can continue to innovate on the idea and also they will know how they can do this again and again on their own without the teacher. So we always believe that, you know, the function of the teacher is to make sure that the student can become an independent thinker because the teacher is not going to be around forever. So the idea is to make us redundant as soon as possible. And after they graduate, they're supposed to carry their skills with them. In terms of physics, maybe you want to make some comments.
Yeah. So, I mean, in terms of physics, it's essentially, it's about the same style, right? So I will say something very basic, a very basic idea about physics. Depending on the topic, we'll start with this one basic idea. And then I will force them. I say, look, okay, here's a statement. This is from observation. Okay. Then I will make them, I say, what does this statement imply? What else can we infer from the statement? And then they'll be thinking, they'll say, oh, this. I say, it's all right, I'll give them time. Then I'll give little hints. I keep asking questions. I never actually give any answers. They will provide the answers themselves. So in this way, they are essentially discovering the physics themselves. And if you discover it yourself, you will never forget it. And then another thing I would normally do is to have a real life examples, real life problem. I say, look, okay, this is it. Here's the question. Why is this like this? Based on what you know about physics now, how do you relate to that? Thinking and say, oh, and then that way, when you utilize the tool, you'll be familiar with it. right?
Correct.
Then
Correct.
you have a machine you just bought, you've never seen it before, you're going
Right.
to struggle. But you use the machine 7 times,
Mm.
after what you can do it blindfolded.
Yeah, exactly.
And
So I
then, exactly, yeah.
correct. I think I've seen well, like Miss Davina do this as well, and I've done this many times in class as well. The student says, "No, I don't know." Then I just give them a hint. I get them started. I get them working, and eventually they somehow manage to find it out on their own. But I think there is two things that are key that you mentioned here. I think parents can benefit from this as well. You always have to give time, and you have to stay back.
Yes.
You really can't go and mess their process of discovery. I think a lot of teachers, I've noticed this because I've sat behind in classes where teachers do mock teaching, and I've seen teachers teach, like in my previous organization. They want to save time. I don't know why, but they just want to make sure it's done. Okay, I've thought, oh, today is my scheme of work. I'm supposed to teach this topic. Okay, done. I've delivered the lesson. Bye. So this, I think, is also stopping students from becoming thinkers of their own.
Yeah, because the student aspect is actually important. I always tell my students, I'll say this. You don't have to worry that it takes you a long time to figure this out. It physicists 60 years to get this, 100 years to get this. You think you're going to get it in 6 seconds? Of course not. But I'm here to help because I already know the answer.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
take your time. Some things have taken hundreds, if not thousands of years to get to where we are now.
Correct, correct.
Time, yeah.
Yeah, definitely see an eye on you with you on that lah. Like definitely, like the fact that I always tell them it's not easy for me sitting here and hinting, because I already know the answer. I can always tell you immediately. So I have to be patient to make you figure it out so that you get it on your own. But when they discover it, it's quite a
yes.
It's
You feel a sense of accomplishment as a teacher, like, oh, they got it there. You're like, you're waiting by the finish line, just seeing them struggle, going to the wrong road, but then they'll come out again when you call them.
Mm-hmm.
And after they'll get there at the end, and they will never forget the road. They will know how to get there again.
Right. Now, so we've discussed a few things like, and on how we teach at Pasxcel, especially how you do it for physics, how I do it for economics. Now, I think this is what education, at least on my point, I feel that this is what education should be about. It should be about a process of discovery, acquiring skills, acquiring knowledge, which I think has greatly been disregarded in the modern day education. Yeah. But then, there's another question that I want to ask you. So this is in the 21st century, like a lot of my students have gotten back to me on this, and though I've given them an answer, I want to know what your answer is. That not everyone, they say, is going to be a mathematician or engineer, and then students usually ask, why am I studying trigonometry? Why am I studying algebra? So if a student asks you this, especially, I think a lot of parents also face this situation when students come and ask the children come and ask them, like, why am I even bothering doing this? I don't think so. I want to do this. Maybe all I want to do for life is just be a TikTok influencer, So what would you do to students when they ask you this sort of a question? Or when they pose these kind of things to you?
So usually a student will say this, okay, when am I ever going to use algebra? When am I ever going to use trigonometry? When am I going to ever need to know how to find the angle of a right angle triangle with this length and that length? So I'll tell them, look, you will never, unless you become a mathematician, you will never ever need to know the area of a circle. You will never ever need to know how to do calculus. But that's not the point of mathematics. That's not the point we are teaching you mathematics. We're teaching you mathematics for one simple reason. Mathematics is the art of problem solving.
Correct.
How to analyze a problem, and then using basic sets of assumption and a strong chain of logical reasoning, you will get to a solution. You will break down the problem and see what is the essential part of the problem and what is the fluff. What is it that's a distraction, right? So it so happens that the problem we ask you to solve in mathematics involves angles, triangles, circles, geometry. It's because this is the easiest way to teach you the skill at a simple level. Because mathematics problems are simpler than real life problems. Do you agree? Because there's an answer. We know the answer. So why would we teach you the skill with a problem that we know, none of us know how to solve? Like, what's the meaning of life? But how can I tell you that if I don't know that? But I do know what the cosine of an angle is. I do know what the area of a parallelogram is. I do know how to do calculus. And these are well-defined problems that we can use to train you. It's a way to train your mind to solve problems. It's not the algebra itself that's important.
Yeah.
It's the technique you use. to solve the algebra problem.
Yeah, I mean, about algebra, I really need to share this. I mean, I had a relative who once like was telling me that the children are not doing very well in maths and in algebra. Then they were like, I don't remember ever using algebra in life. Like, it's not really important. Like, it's okay, fine. But then I really beg to differ, no? Because I felt like algebra is life. Like, there's always going to be an unknown. There's always going to be something that is within your control, and there's going to be something that you want. Like, you need to work within these elements to find an answer. And if you can teach that to a student, then they go like, okay, I always need to work within a parameter. Like I tell them, maths is always about working within parameters, and life is going to be like that. You're not going to have unlimited resources to solve your problem. You really have to solve the problem within limited parameters. And I think maths, economics, all the subjects that they actually teach us in high school teaches these things. Yeah. But it's just that the teachers don't hide.
You can use it outside of maths. You see?
Yeah.
You're limited here, and then you forget that the skill is transferable,
Especially in the 21st century, right? I think it is about skill acquisition. If you can't learn, or if you don't know what are the skills that you can carry forward after high school into working life, then you're going to be really lost as a student, which you can see why most Malaysians are now unemployed. They find such a huge problem, fresh graduates to find employment and whatever not. Now, that brings us to a few things that we've been discussing. The next one I wanted to ask you is, how do you find the philosophies of teaching at Pasxcel different from other places? Because I remember when you came on board, we definitely had this discussion, and like our philosophies jived. And I think this is the correct time that I want to share something about what Rasyad said. So in the beginning, when Rasyad got his email to join us, he thought, oh, we're not telling the truth, that only less than 5% of teachers actually get to the final stage of interview, right? You're like, these guys are not telling the truth. Then once he joined us, he figured out, oh, wow, that it is the truth, that it's very, very difficult to make it as a teacher at Pasxcel Academy. So definitely you would have noticed that there are quite a number of differences, but of course, differences from other places, but it jives with your own philosophies when it comes to teaching. So what are some philosophies that you think parents should be able to apply at home if, let's say, they are deciding to just homeschool on their own without coming to Pasxcel or any other school?
Yeah, so I think the thing that really attracted me to how Pasxcel teaches its students is the way they engage with it. To me, that's the most glaring one. The way you engage with the students and the way you make them a part of the learning journey. There is still a teacher-student kind of difference, but the student is more of the assistant to get to that branch of knowledge. And we're going to explore all this together. So I see that the student becomes engaged in the conversation. It's not they sit down and I talk for one, and then, okay, that's it, goodbye. No, there's a back and forth. There's a conversation that goes, between the students. There's more of, okay, I know the answer. For example, as a teacher, I know the answer, but I'm not going to let you know it straight away. I want you to get here with me. Just because I'm already here doesn't mean that I'm just going to drag you. No, you are going to come with me. And that kind of engagement, I think, is one of the main philosophies that I enjoy. I truly, am linked, dive with in Pasxcel, right?
Okay, yeah, that's definitely it. That's one of the few changes. I think few critical differences that we have, few big differences we have compared to others, and I think parents have pointed this out as well. So I think what parents can benefit from what Teacher Rasyad just shared is, you need to make the children a part of the journey. It has to be their journey. It cannot be yours. If you feel your child is not interested in the journey, right, it's your job to make them have a buy-in, to make them see what is the point of all these things. And it has to be in their language. It's something that they can relate to. It takes a bit of work, but once you do it, it's very satisfying for both like the parent as well as the child. Right, Rasyad, that brings us to the next question that we have, which is, we always talk about teachers play a pivotal role in the students, how students think and how students turn out. Except, the role of a teacher, I think, is only second to that of a parent. Now, if I were to ask you, how can we measure the effectiveness of a good teacher? What would you say? Of a good class being done, what would you say is the measure that we can use for parents to measure as well?
To me, the best, for me personally, I'm going to talk as a teacher first, after I finish a class, and when I know I've made an impact in the class, at the end of the class, students have a lot more questions than when they had it at the beginning of the class.
Correct. Yeah.
Start asking me, why is it like this? Oh, why is it like that? But you said this, but now but then how does that work with this? The moment they have all those questions, I know I've become effective, because that means they've actually sat down, they've listened, and they've linked up all the things I've said, and they have now a framework in their mind, and they're starting to fill up those framework. They know the limitation of what they know and what they don't know.
Yeah, I especially like the part when the students start saying, but you said.
Yes, hey, you just now said this. And then you're like, okay, so now I can get into a bit deeper detail. We can polish it. You're right, that was a generalization. So yeah, exactly.
Like usually, like I notice even in economics, maybe we have studied a different topic and then they start to relate it to another new topic, and then they're like, but in that topic you said this. Why are you saying this now? So that as a teacher tells me that, hey, you've been listening, you've been actually trying to put it in your head, and now you find like it's conflicting ideas and you need to debate it out. So yes, I definitely agree that if you have more questions at the end of the class than when the class started, that's definitely been an effective class because it has been an engaging one. And also, I think what we need to see is how curious are the student to know more. If let's say at the end of your topic, then the student has no question, they don't want to know anything more, then that means class has been very disengaging. The student doesn't want to know anything more beyond that. That's another point that I can think of for parents to see, especially parents who engage with their children in conversations.
They are receptive to the lesson that you just gave them, right?
Correct. So parents, I mean, if you want to see whether the teacher is doing a good job, whether the child, whether the school your child is going to is doing a good job, when you engage them in a conversation, you can see that your child is getting more and more curious about what they are studying. You can see that your children are definitely not accepting things at face value.
I was about to give an example of this, right? When set things as face value. So I was teaching a student of mine, and somehow the topic was about something else, but it related to the stars, right? I was explaining, so I was explaining a bit about the stars, and I said, there's a lot of hydrogen and helium in the stars, and this is how it relates to whatever we were talking about. And then once I'm done, I asked her, okay, do you have any questions? She said, wait, how do you know there's hydrogen and helium in the star? Nobody's been there. And I was like, oh, see, I got caught off guard because most people would just accept my word, because most people, when I talk to them about these things, they'll say, oh, okay, there's hydrogen and helium in the stars. Nobody ever asked me, how do I know? And she was not going to accept this at face value. She said, wait, you have to tell me how you know. You can't see helium, you can't see, it's a fire up in the sky. So how do you know it is? And so I got into, and then the good thing is I got to relate that to other topics that they've already studied and show, okay, look, well, if you know a prism and it linked to other topics and they see the connection in physics, and now I know that they really want to know.
Yeah, the students always really do want to know if you make the lesson interesting enough. Like, it's never that, I never believed when teachers or colleagues tell me that, oh no, the student's not interested. You didn't deliver it in a way that piques their interest. That's more like it, because they are very young. They're very curious. If you deliver it in a way that will pique their interest, they definitely will be very interested. So that's a very good one. I was wondering the same thing. I was like, oh, how does Rasyad know there's helium there? Yeah, but she's a very smart question. I believe it was very satisfying for you as a teacher, right?
Yes, because I got a chance to teach them more things and link it to something they already know, and now they will never forget that.
Yeah. Now the fact that she asked the question, right, I think that brings us to one of the core values at Pasxcel. Like I always share this as well. Like, we believe that the courage and humility to ask why is more important than knowing the answer. Like, I always feel like to have that courage and humility to ask why is way more important than knowing the answer. And especially so because in the 21st century with Google and all that, information is no longer the sign of intelligence, like it cannot be. I remember, like, when we were a child, our parents used to take so much pride if you can, like, mention 10 capitals of a country or things like that, or how many legs does a particular insect have. And at this point in time, nobody even cares, like, because they can just Google it.
I can Google it now, 5 seconds. I'll tell you all the capitals of every country in this world.
Yeah.
Correct?
Right.
But the difference is that just now, knowing something, knowing the name of something,
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean you know anything about it,
Mm.
right? For example, let's say you know the capital of Portugal. What's the capital of Portugal? It's Lisbon. Okay, so I know that. Do you
Mm.
know anything about Lisbon? Do you know the culture in Lisbon? Do you know the economic status of Lisbon? What are the, what's the cultural history there?
Mm. Mm.
All those things, then it doesn't matter. You know that the capital of Portugal is Lisbon.
Mm.
You still don't know anything. So just because everything is at our fingertips now, if
Mm.
you are going to go in and read and explore and just learn about new things,
Uh-huh.
it's right. You can have all the information in your hands, but if you're not going to do anything with it, you're not going to apply yourself to it. It's no different.
Right. Wait, there's this question from Miss Chitra. Before I answer or I pose a question to Mr. Rasyad, I just like to say something that you said, right? This is very much relatable to economics. And so here, if you're listening, this is right out of your class. We discussed this a few times, right? He always asks me this question. This boy likes to ask this question, and he's like always mesmerized by this economic fact. Like Venezuela has actually the most resource, like the most oil-rich country in the world, but right now they are in like a political turmoil. So I think that exactly explains what is the situation with the 21st century education. It's been turned over. It doesn't matter that you have the most information nowadays. How do you use it?
Yeah.
It really doesn't matter how much you have, but how you use it. So that's where the focus at Pasxcel is learning how to integrate the knowledge. And that brings us to Ms. Chitra's question. She just posed a question. And the question, let me read it out to you. She says, how about students who can't relate between topics? Why do you think this happens between, so she's asking, why can't students relate between topics?
Okay. I'm going to answer from a physics point of view or a maths point of view.
Okay,
right?
go ahead.
So it might be different than how you would answer, but usually I find the issue with this is that they think that because they don't understand that physics is the study of the world, they think that you can divide it into topics. So they say this. So one of the most common questions students like to ask is like, oh, if I ask them a question, they say, oh, which topic is this? They start thinking in terms of topic. Like, what do you mean which topic? If this is a physics question, whichever topic, it may require more than one or two topics. It's because they don't see that integration. It's up to the teachers to show them, look, I know in topic 1, we talked about forces. But the moment we go into, say, topic 3, thermophysics or something, it doesn't mean forces disappear. In fact, they're still present everywhere in the system. I have to tell you. But usually what happens is that they say, okay, let's just talk about this thermal stuff and don't mention anything from other topics. Because it's just going to waste my time teaching you, or, I want to get over, usually I want to get over this topic quickly and then we can go to the next topic.
Right.
But don't link it up. The students think, oh, it's all separate stuff. But it's not. So it's actually the teachers, usually it's the teachers, it's on the teacher's part to show them how everything is linked. It's not that the student doesn't see it. The student was not shown it. If you don't show that they are linked, they are not going to be able to link it.
Yeah, I think on Ms. Chitra's part, I think there's one point that I wanted to highlight, like what you just said, right? I think this happens because teachers teach for exams instead of teachers teaching for knowledge. So though, yeah, you definitely have to ace your exams, but why students even ask that question? Because students are so programmed to think that, okay, the question will come from this part of the syllabus, this question will come up from this part of the syllabus. I mean, I think that might work for SPM, I'm not really sure, but at least for IGCSE, I know they do have topical-based questions, but quite a number of those questions are still going to be very much integrated. And I think students can't see the integration because teachers don't take the time to explain things are integrated. I think this is very true, especially if you do economics or business studies, right? You can't run away from integration. Most of the question papers are entirely, like, the questions are actually pretty integrated. You can't, because economics is a study, though people say it's about finance, it's more about people. So all these topics are definitely interrelated. You can't have a very bad population boom and then not have any repercussions on the resources or the demand on the country, or how you import, export. That's just not going to happen. Like, everything is very integrated. And unfortunately, teachers, because they teach solely based on syllabus, and like what teacher Rasyad shared, because they want to get it over with, they don't take the time to form the integration, to teach students actually what you do in high school is a basic step of all this integrated into one. And then when you go into university, you're going to study a bit more deeper. So that they don't take the time to explain that. I think that is the main issue. It's not that students can't see. If a student studies on their own, they definitely can't see. If this will happen. If a student studies on their own, there's no way the student is going to be able to see this because everything is new. Like when we look back after 15 years of like graduating from high school, of course, all of it looks integrated. So they definitely need a teacher to point it out to them. So I hope that answers your question, Ms. Chitra. Now, yeah, so now that brings us to the last question of the day that we're going to have. So whenever we talk about the fast track program at Pasxcel, right, most parents think that, oh, finishing school at 14, 15 is way too early. You know, what will my child do? They're so young, 14, 15, you know, is it safe for them to go to uni with 20 plus young adults? Because when you go to university, even as a pre-U, let's say you go to Sunway or Taylor's, you might be joining pre-U at 18. There's still going to be master students who are 25, 26 there. So imagine when you enter uni at 14, 15, and then there will be other students who are 25, 26. So technically 10 years you're senior. And a lot of parents are very uncomfortable with the fact that students are finishing school a bit too early. Now, what are your thoughts about this?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. They don't have to jump straight into university immediately after they're 14 or 15, right? They have time.
Mm-hmm.
Which before this, if you remember our schooling, I started school when I was 7, and then tak habis. It just continued on, and I was school, and I was like, okay, I have to go pre-U. Oh, I have to go into uni. Oh, I have to do my master's. Like, okay, but the good thing was I knew what I wanted to do. But a lot of students, a lot of my friends, in fact, they used to complain. Like, I asked them, what is it that you want to do? What is it that you want to study? They don't know. They say, I'm just doing this because people say this is good or this is good and all that.
Correct.
You finish your education system, at least your secondary education system, early, you've got 2 years to explore the world. Learn about things. What am I interested in? What do I want to do? Now they can make informed decisions. Now they can make, now they know, oh, my passion is really physics. Or my passion is engineering. Or my passion is law. Because I've read up a lot about history. So they have time to analyze what they want to do with their lives. I'm not saying after this 14, 15, okay, fast track program, off to pre-U. No. They will have time. They can do internship. They can get real life skills. They can learn other, important life skills like financial literacy or even farming, whatever they want to explore. That is the time that should be given to them.
Yeah, I think an important point that you're making here, right, is that parents feel unsafe about the children entering university. And I think that's a very important, of course, they have every right to feel that way. But I also like to remind parents that, students like entering university later, getting married later, graduating later is something that's happening now. Your grandparents used to get married at 12, 13. So having said that, I'm not saying your child should get married.
Students to get married at 12, 13.
That's not what I'm saying. Just to clarify, I'm not saying your child should get married at 12 or 13, but I really agree with Teacher Rasyad when he says that, I remember with my education as well, at 17, you're done, and then you're on to the next step. There's no break. But unfortunately, after I became a teacher, when I look back at it, a lot of students actually have no clue what they want to do. And I think it's very unfair, borderline cruelty to ask a 16-year-old to decide what they want to do for the rest of their life. Like,
in 2 months, because the application is in 2-3 months. Like, oh, okay, I'll just decide on, okay. And then they can't do it.
And then they can't do it, and then they feel bad about it. Like, just to share my personal experience, right? When I was doing chartered accountancy, I loved the course. I absolutely loved what I studied. But if you ask me to be an accountant, sitting down there day after day, just looking at papers, boxes, I'm gonna die. It's just not my personality, So we are robbing our young adults, young children, to figure out what they really want. So that's why, like what you were sharing just now, this is the idea we have at Pasxcel, right? So you finish school by 14, 15, you can absolutely do it. The syllabus is completely simple. A lot of parents feel like, oh my God, it's so hard. Maybe you should actually sit down and look at the syllabus. If you ever do, you will find out that they use...
You can enroll, and I will teach you in 6 months everything that you need to do, and you can do an IGCSE and you'll get an A star.
Yes.
You come and I'll teach you physics. Everybody can do it.
Everybody can do it. That's the thing, guys. Like, for year 7, 8, 9, imagine it's one textbook for 3 years. And then you do the same another textbook for 2 years. It's too long. These kids are just spending way too long of a time in school. If you get done in school fast, then you have the time to explore what you really want to do. So like we have one of our students who actually interning with us, and he's like, having fun writing emails, shortlisting candidates for interviews, and like even I think Rashad has a chance to talk to him. Now Natasha has talked to him, and he's like, wow, this guy's intelligent. So now he knows what it is like to be in an office environment, what it is like to be working, what are the requirements when you go to a workplace. So he knows all these things, and he's definitely going to give him insane amount of advantage over those who have never had these experiences. And if you are able to try a couple of internships before you even enter uni, then the chances of you making a right decision is way higher. Like, like those who became doctors, a lot of them said, oh, if I was made to follow a houseman for like 3 months, not even 3 months, some of them said even 2 weeks, I would have never chose to become a doctor. Like, So it's just a matter of giving them that exposure. And for parents who have already chose to put their children in private education, it makes sense that you give them that added competitive advantage over others. Like, you finish fast, you get done with school. There's so much more things that you can do with the rest of your life. You get a head start above everyone else. So that would be my few parting points. And if if you guys are interested on how this can be done, then drop us a DM, drop us a comment, ask us a question. Maybe me, Rashad, Miss Devina, any of our teachers can talk to you and see if this program will be a good fit for you. Other than that, I think we've run out of questions. Let me check if any of the other parents have asked any questions so far. Let's see. Okay, so the question here is, does the government allow under 18 kids to do internship? Yes. The thing is, it's how you look at it. In terms of internship, right? Internship has been there for a long time. Like when we do it with us at Pasxcel, it's still a part of their learning curriculum. You can definitely get it done. It's completely possible for them to try because the legal age for working is 15. So definitely above 15, everybody can work and do what they want to do. A lot of children do it because they need to support their families, where else in terms for us, we're doing it so that the student gets a lot of learning experiences and they get an idea on what they are supposed to do. So it's just giving them a lot of exposure in what they need to do. Yeah, so I hope that answers Miss Chitra's questions. Do you have any other questions? Do you have any other answers for that, Mr. Rasyad?
No, I think you said it quite perfectly already.
All right, okay, great. So that brings us to the end of the question. So Miss Chitra and the others who are watching, so if you have any other questions, just drop it in the comment section. We will definitely get back to you. Maybe we'll do it in another live session. Other than that, we have come to the end of the session. So thank you so much for your time, Teacher Rasyad, for sharing.
Thank you for having me. Always great talking to you.
Thank you so much. And we hope our discussion today could benefit a lot of parents, students, and even teachers alike, especially teachers. Hopefully you take some cues from what Teacher Rasyad shared and use it for your classes. Now, if you have any other questions, please feel free to leave a comment down below and we will try our level best to answer them. Until then, see you on the next live session. Happy weekend and good night.
Good night, everyone.